Hello and welcome, everyone. It is time to enter the Kumite. I'm joined today by my friend and fellow colleague, Daniel Caballero,
Hello, hello.
and our technical engineer, the 9-4 Ninja himself, Sean Myers. This episode, we will be digging into the UFC Vegas 25 main event, Yuri Prochazka versus Dominic Reyes. This will be an interesting fight to break down due to Yuri's unorthodox style.
Definitely an unorthodox fighter. But tell me, to get started, where are these two fighters at within their careers coming into the fight? Give us some background on them.
So Reyes is the UFC vet in this case, even though he is, less experience overall. He is the UFC veteran here. He's number 3 contender in the light heavyweight division. He's coming into this fight at 14-2. He's coming off of a TKO loss to Jan Blachowicz on a 2-fight losing streak. Technically, I scored him to beat Jones, but that's besides the point. Fate has already dealt a hand. Jones would have won that fight if it was to the death, though. I definitely saw that Dominic was starting to fade a little bit, and Jones was coming into himself, and he was starting to take over. So what's some quick notes about Dominic Reyes? And Dominic, I think, is the most technical savvy when it comes to range management, countering capability, and the ability to create angles. This is one thing he did really well. He would cut off John Jones's angles when Jones was backing up, and then he would always move out laterally in very difficult ways for Jones to really to put the pressure on him. Now, Blachowicz had the answer to this by tagging on that body kick on the end of his combos to catch him, with his hands up, blocking his face as he's moving out. And that ended up bringing his guard down. That's a whole other conversation for another podcast. But Reyes, dude, tough as nails. He seems to break under pressure. He prefers a bit more of a technical fight because he's a very technical fighter. Very fundamentally responsible. Very clever. So that's where Reyes is coming into this right now. And Prochazka, man, this is his second fight in the UFC. He's coming in 27-3, coming off of a second-round knockout of Volkan Oezdemir. And just recently, Volkan had a fight against Dominic Reyes, I think it was about a year ago. Really close, split decision fight. I will say that I did personally score Volkan to win that fight, but again, besides the points. Procházka is coming in on an 11-fight win streak, a 9-fight knockout streak, and has a total of 23 first-round finishes.
That's a crazy resume.
That's
so there's definitely a big experience gap between these two fighters. Who did you have to win the fight coming into this?
Well, hold on. We're not done talking about Procházka. Former amateur Muay Thai kickboxer. So the MMA is, and all of the things he's done, he's left in that side of the world a legacy. He's number 6 and multiple MMA light heavyweight rankings that include all the organizations from around the world. He's number 6 light heavyweight in their books. He is the inaugural and former Ryzen light heavyweight champion and the inaugural and former Czech GCF light heavyweight champion. So this man, he's got this interesting, quirky style, dip to uppercut. He strikes from the hip with his hands low, but he's really good at parrying strikes and getting his head off the center line. Good movement. He's got very herky-jerky feints. And he kind of reminds me of Viking Tony Ferguson. Like someone you can't game plan for because he's just flowing in there.
Yeah.
He has a beautiful stance switch after a strike when he's chasing someone down, trying to cut him off, get their back to the cage with his feints and with his strikes, and then he'll stance switch, and then he'll have opened up his power hand.
Most people, especially most fight camps and trainers, they're always going to kind of break down the fighter they're going up against, and they're going to say, okay, we got a boxer, so we need to train our boxing. We got our judo guy, we need to train our takedown defense. We got these things that we can use and train to counter. But when you have a fighter like this that's so unorthodox and so unpredictable, you can't prepare for that. It makes the camp so much harder, and I also feel like there's a mentality there that just makes you can't go in with a specific game plan and expect it to be what makes it work.
Exactly. You got to be ready to adjust.
Yes.
Having game plan habits, having routines that you built into your practice for the fight camp, That's fantastic. Once you're actually in there and you're getting punched in the face
Oh,
and you're
yeah.
getting chased down by this big Viking man, you better be ready to throw away the game plan and fight like
Yes.
a warrior. Pull out that spirit. Yuri, after this fight, Dana promised him a UFC title fight.
That would be great.
2 fights in the UFC. This is unheard of. I don't think this has ever happened before.
2 fights. I'm not sure.
2 fights and then a title fight.
And then a title fight. That is very.
I don't think
unheard
that's ever happened before.
of. But do you think he has a chance against Blachowicz?
Well, Blachowicz is fighting Glover Teixeira. That's coming up.
Yes.
So if he beats Teixeira, I see the Jan Yuri fight is very unpredictable. Either person can finish the other. Jan's technically sound, defensive. I think Jan would do what Reyes did without as much movement, more danger coming back from his way because of his power and because of he's not going to give ground as much as Reyes will. Reyes is willing to give up center of the octagon to get out of harm's way. Jan's going to stand there, block, counter, slip, counter. So I think I'm going to predict Jan Blachowicz to win the fight if Yuri and him go up against each other. Against Glover, if Glover gets the decision against Blachowicz, which is very realistic, I do have Jan winning the fight, but Glover can definitely win that fight. I see Yuri finishing Glover. I think it's a bad style. I actually predict precisely it'll be a dip to uppercut. He'll dip down. It's going to look like he could throw his left overhand. It's going to look like he can go for a takedown. It's going to look like he's going to throw a high head kick, a power head kick. But what he's really going to do is he's going to force Glover to dip his head down. And he's going to catch him with uppercut. I see it. I've dreamed about it. I'm just kidding. I haven't had a dream about it. But.
All right. Well, we see where these guys come from. We know what might be in store for them. Tell us about this fight. How did these two warriors, how did it pan out in the kumite?
They are both warriors. They're both very respectable human beings. They followed the Bushido code. This is one of my favorite fight build-ups, even though there was no drama, because both men clarified that they respect the hell out of the other.
That is great. I love seeing that.
Sportsmanship, that martial arts spirit.
It's another thing, because we see all these other sports, and some of these athletes can get very heated over the things. There's of course shit talk. There's of course times when in basketball you throw a hand to catch a ball and it catches somebody's face instead. Yes, they can get hit. They can get heated and get into fights then. But you have an actual fight. You are literally going in there with one intent, and that is to make this man either submit or not
be able to
contend anymore, Like that's the whole point of what you're about to do, yet you still have that respect for him. Yeah. It's a whole other kind of mindset.
Yeah, it's that brotherhood kind of thing of like all worldly possessions and connections aside, like this is me and you coming in here as warriors and really just throwing
like
down.
How often do you see that in any other sport, even accidentally throwing a hand out and clipping someone in the chin? Do you see them being all like, oh, good hit, man?
Clasp their hands together, bow. It's not
yeah.
happening. LeBron James is not going to pull that after he gets slapped.
Of course
I will
not.
say I get more mad from being slapped than I do from being punched. I don't know.
No, that's true.
For me, getting slapped hurts more. Just the abrasive surface area on impact, the slap. I don't like it. Sharp things. I don't like sharp things. But blunt force, that's a little bit more handleable for me.
There you go.
Not a word, but
all right. So tell us about this fight.
Okay. So 2 things. First, ESPN YouTube posted Yuri Procházka versus Dominic Cruz. They literally made a banner for that.
That's funny.
I
think I saw reading about something like that.
And I was like, man, imagine these two fighting.
Oh my goodness!
I got Cruz by first round knockout.
You think? You don't think? Yuri got some?
Cruz got that head movement, and he's got that. He's lighter, smaller, a lot smaller, a lot smaller. The commentators even messed up and called him Dominic Cruz for a second.
I'm not gonna lie, when you first wrote this down and I was looking over your outline, I thought you said Dominic Cruz.
It happens, He's like a big Dominic Cruz.
There you go.
But yeah, like I said, both men are respectable. Yuri has that kind of fighter's mentality. He's a philosopher. he's breaking down the spiritual side of fighting, and in his interviews and watching him talk in his third language, you really see it, and that's really good that's really good to feel again.
Yeah.
Anderson Silva was one of those people, like especially when he came into his later years where. He was the Grand Master, and that's what Yuri kind of has that aura of like he's trying to be the Grand Master. That's what got me into martial arts in the first place. My prediction initially for this fight, I was incorrect. Yeah, it happens.
Oh,
to the best
wow,
of us.
we've broken the streak, have
Yeah,
we?
yeah.
Did you call this on the podcast?
I didn't call it on a podcast.
Okay, so
but
the
I'm just being
streak on the
honest with you guys.
podcast isn't broken, but
Yeah,
I
nobody's
love,
perfect.
I love the humbleness, man.
I predicted that with Yuri's style of how he pressures and he stance switches, and it's really good for cutting off angles, but a lot of times he'll stance switch and he's too squared up, and his chin's an easier target. His body opens up. You don't want to be too squared against your opponent standing right in front of him, and that's what he does a lot. And I've seen him get clipped in multiple fights. He got clipped in this fight,
Yeah.
And Reyes almost finished him.
It definitely shows when.
But I predicted a left hand counter.
Of course, and when you see like even the stats, you can't say that it was a dominant performance. You can't. He definitely had to be worried about the scorecards if he would have let it gone to decision, because Dominic Reyes even had better total significant strike percentage. He had better total strike percentage. They both had takedowns. Reyes had a knockdown. I'm not sure if that overtakes a submission attempt as far as scoring goes. But if you're looking at their stats, very evenly matched all around the board. Even Reyes was
those
putting
are
a
the
lot of
stats,
damage.
but you could see how much more of an impact Prochazka was having on Reyes. Reyes was hitting him. He was hitting him with his best shots, and man, he timed those counters. Man, that's what I predict. That's how I predicted the fight to go. Is he was going to get countered by that left hand coming in, chasing him. But and Reyes did catch him, but Prochazka's chin was able to withstand it, and Prochazka was clearly hitting with more power. So Reyes was starting to break, but he was right there. He was not about to give up that fight, but you could feel when he got hit, like he was being discouraged every single time.
Yeah.
But it's the same. It was a similar thing against Blachowicz. He didn't have nearly as much success against Blachowicz. Blachowicz had a crazy game plan for him. That was amazing. Blachowicz's camp, you got to give him all the credit for kind of breaking down Reyes' style. But yeah, no, Reyes landed some good shots. He had him hurt, but he overstepped for that finish.
Yeah.
And then he gets pulled into clinch because Yuri tried to go for a single leg. Yuri's not a wrestler. Reyes is actually a pretty good wrestler. Yuri's a decent wrestler, but especially not after getting rocked. Is he going to take Reyes down? But Reyes overstepped. He gets caught up in the clinch, and then he pulls for guillotine. He could have finished him right there if he would have made some distance and started landing some big shots while he was still rocked. He pulled for guillotine. I guess he felt he had it, but this is another thing. Position over submission, guys.
Yes.
You cannot give up your dominant position to try to get that quick submission finish.
Some submissions, too, especially when you're already deep into a fight. Yeah, I mean, it's only second round, but fighters get tired, and going through being already there, you're going to tire yourself out going for a submission attempt. If you try and spend too long on that submission attempt, you will do exactly that. You'll tire yourself out.
Especially a guillotine.
Especially a guillotine.
Burns out your bicep.
It
and
does.
then now you can't get full extension on your punches.
Now you can't throw
You
as
can
fast
swing
as you're
hooks,
able to.
but your straight punches don't have that final snap on the end of it because your bicep is
Most of
burnt
the best jiu-jitsu fighters, ground game fighters that I've seen, they bide their time. They wait until they know this is submission I can get.
Exactly.
They don't waste their time or energy. If they do, they'll get the position.
Yeah.
They'll lock up a guillotine, but they won't waste their energy on it. If he slips out, he'll slip out and get into a better position. He won't waste all that energy just trying to get nothing. Because
and MMA is a little bit different. There's a lot more opportunities and different ways to get yourself out of sticky situations than MMA. And jiu-jitsu, you have more time.
Definitely.
Because you're doing a specific thing.
Yep.
In MMA, people are almost always trying to get up or
Take
sweep you,
ground and pound.
or exactly. So, submissions
Lot
are
more to
harder in
think
MMA
about.
to
Very
get,
much
especially
different.
not having gis. But I think that was a mistake. That could have been Reyes' finish if he wouldn't have overstepped right there.
Or he could
And
be
he would have deserved that because he took some serious damage in that first round.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, let's talk about the finish because that is one of the most highlight reel knockouts I've ever seen in my life. Yuri is quickly becoming one of my favorite fighters that I've ever come across.
Very quick thinking on his part because I know that initial strike was that it was the first elbow that missed before he spun around for the back elbow.
He landed one elbow, and then he tried to do a splitting elbow over the guard of Reyes,
and
that one just barely glazed,
Mm-hmm.
and then he stepped into it, and then he gave it a little bit of time. He was patient, and he was watching with his peripheral on Dominic Reyes what he was doing, and he left his back to Reyes, and then he left Reyes just enough time to think, I'm going to land this left hand from behind him around the side, I'm going to knock him out. And then as soon as Reyes opened up to throw that left hand, he got caught with that spinning elbow. The third spinning elbow knockout in UFC history.
Really?
Only one of 3.
Man, it was a pretty one to watch. Definitely a highlight reel on his end. That is one of those things you see in the movies, man. It flowed so well. He did have that pause, allowed him to open up, but he easily could have gone through his guard and just still knocked him clean out.
Well, I don't think so because Reyes fought Jones, right? And most people who do back spinning elbows throw it immediately because they don't want to leave you time to think about it. So I'm going to throw this back spinning elbow as quickly as possible and try to get back into position. He was patient. And he made Reyes open up. I don't think the elbow would have landed because Reyes usually is very responsible with protecting his head against the fence. And he was doing that a lot, and Yuri kept catching him with teep kicks to the body and bouncing him off that cage because Reyes is so responsible with his head defense when his back is against the cage especially. But, Reyes, he sticks to those fundamentals. He's not doing too much. And that's one thing I really like about Reyes. I like those kind of fighters. I like the crazy, quirky fighters too, but those fundamental fighters, when you watch them make a jab, win a fight, then it just gives you a whole new respect for the fundamentals. I gotta say, man, I think Dominic should take about a year off after taking the damage with Jan and then the vicious knockout from Prochazka. He was out for a minute. He was out, and the way that he landed after that knockout, he landed with his head tucked into it, his chin tucked into his chest, with all of his weight. He landed where his body was at a 90-degree angle, leaning forward. So all of his body weight went into smashing his head, which his chin is tucked into his chest, after the elbow right across the chin perfectly to just clip the brain off.
Perfectly placed elbow. He was out. He didn't even feel him landing, but his body definitely is going to feel the effects of it, though.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, he's definitely concussed twice. I think he got concussed twice right there.
Only again another reason we love to thank these fighters for
whiplash.
doing this, man.
I want to check up on it.
It's something else to go into that ring,
I mean,
to think that could happen.
You better be ready to potentially die every time you go in there. It's happened. Not
everybody
in the UFC,
takes damage. Everybody takes damage, and there's definitely people in their careers who have not taken as much damage as others, But we've seen it. Dan Henderson has a flat face. Nate Diaz can't talk anymore. You get messed up by doing this stuff. That's why this ain't a sport.
It's not a sport.
I love that you came up with that because it's 100% true. You go in there to mess people up.
Yeah. I mean, I like to, I'll say it's a sport to the right person to get it on commissions and, like to make it a family friendly, I wouldn't say family friendly, but to think of it as, a meetup of the world's best athletes.
Yeah.
Rather than, these are brutes in a cage, because a lot of these guys aren't brutes anymore. Back in the day, old school UFC, a lot of those guys were brutes. They were trained killers.
Oh, most definitely.
They were rough, scuff people from the streets.
But I mean, you have to look at especially when you delve into martial arts itself as a history. There's time periods and places where martial arts was revered as just an honorable and just something you do, not something. It's that warrior in a garden mentality. Something that I'm gonna train, I'm gonna get good at, just in case I need it. But I hope I never do.
Yeah, and there's also the other side of that.
That's just
people
I need to get
fight
better.
to live.
I'm fighting to survive, we're going to fight these wars. I'm going to make sure I live through them.
Yeah, I'm gonna make sure I don't go to them, so I'm gonna be the best fighter I can.
Yeah,
be.
exactly. Whatever it may be, like
I'm
there's
gonna represent the country. That's good enough for you guys, right?
and with today's day and age, we've molded all of these different styles, these different reasons of fighting to become what is now the UFC, ONE FC, bare knuckle, all these different promotions that is just showing and putting light on these martial arts. Because at the end of the day, I love every single style, every single art form that is martial arts is just wonderful
I don't really care
to see.
for the clinch grinders, the ones just hold them up against the cage.
I mean, is there
Close was one of those.
is there like a style that's what is that?
The clinch grinders?
But like, is there a style that specifically fights over that?
No,
Exactly. No, that's just.
You're talking about like.
I'm talking about like I'm just a big fan of martial arts and like
Okay.
old kung fu,
I mean,
Wing
individual
Chun.
styles.
Yes.
I mean, like.
I mean, I love
styles.
MMA and the fact that it mixes it up.
Practices.
Yeah, I'm talking about specific practices.
Got you. All right.
But-
Okay, guys. With that, we will wrap up our thoughts on UFC Vegas 25's main event. I'd like to thank you, Daniel, for being here and
Yes,
sharing
sir,
your
of course.
thoughts.
Thank you, sir.
I'd like to thank our technical engineer, the 9 Pro Ninja himself, Sean Myers. I'd also like to thank the fighters for going up on the world stage and laying it all on the line.
Every single one of you.
Lastly, but certainly not least, I'd like to thank everyone who entered the Kumite with us here today. Remember, this is not a sport. You don't play fight.